Hi, welcome to our daily encounter. In our readings lately, you've probably noticed that a lot of the Psalms are now having the theme of worship running through them quite a bit. And as you read those Psalms, perhaps it has motivated you to want to worship God more. And that's a wonderful attitude and a wonderful thing to desire. Unfortunately, a lot of people are limited by worshiping the Lord more because they are limited by what they think worship is. For instance, some think that worshiping God is merely just going to church on Sunday and singing a few hymns and then going home. And that's the only time really that they worship God, and that's the only time that they ever think about worshiping God. Others may recognize that, hey, I can worship God at other times besides at church. And so they do worship the Lord, but they only think about worshiping God as singing songs. That when they can sing songs to God, then they're worshiping God. Or if they can listen to worship songs, then they can worship God. But that's about the extent to which they think about worship. In Psalms 105, we're going to have a chance to expand our minds on what worship is and what activities we can be involved in worshiping the Lord. As a matter of fact, contained in Psalm 105 is what I call the 5 acts of personal worship. We hear a lot of times the 5 acts of worship, and it's usually tied to a church service. You have the sermon, you have songs, you have prayer, you have the Lord's Supper, and you have giving. And those are the 5 acts of worship. Well, in Psalms 105, we have what could be called the 5 acts of personal worship. These are acts of worship that we can do at any time, in any place. When we're driving to work, while we're at work, when we're going for our afternoon walk, while we're picking out groceries, picking up groceries, we can be involved in at least one or two of these acts of worship at all times. So let's see what they are. It starts in verse 1, where he says, "Oh, give thanks to the Lord, call upon his name, make known his deeds among the peoples. Sing to him, sing praises to him, speak of all his wonders. Glory in his holy name. Let the heart of those who seek the Lord be glad. Seek the Lord in his strength, seek his face continually. Remember his wonders which he has done, his marvels, and the judgments uttered by his mouth." And so the first act of worship we can see in these verses is thanksgiving, giving thanks to the Lord. When we thank the Lord for the blessings that we have, it is an act of worship, because what we're doing is we're giving credit due to the one who has given us all things. So it could be something as simple as sitting down and thanking God for the food that he gave you today. But it should go a lot further than just that, because we are just surrounded with blessings from the Lord. We have blessings that are all around us, and we have blessings that are within us. We have physical blessings, we also have spiritual blessings. So there's plenty of material for us to go off of in trying to find things to thank the Lord for, and we really don't have to try that hard at all. And so all day, you can just be thanking the Lord for your car as you get into it, thanking the Lord that your car actually starts when you turn it on, thanking the Lord for air conditioning, especially this time of year. You just, with every activity that you're engaged in, find something to thank God about. This will, one, cause worship to flow in your heart, but it also give you a positive perspective on life. Sometimes we tend to focus on the negative, and giving God thanks will help us focus on the positive. So thanksgiving is one of them. The second one is by speaking about the goodness of God to others. And that's where the psalmist says, make known his deeds among the peoples. Talking about God to others is an act of worship. Telling people the good things that God has done for you in your life is an act of worship. Also telling people, of course, about the gospel and about him sending his son to die on the cross so that we can be saved from the wrath of God. That is an act of worship, making known his deeds among the people, letting people know all the great things that God has done. It brings glory to his name. It brings praise to his name when we recognize the wonders, the great things that God has accomplished here upon the earth. So when you're talking to somebody, just share with them one or two or more things that God has done in your life and how you're thankful to the Lord for what he has done. The third one is what we typically think about when we talk about worship. This is contained in verse 2. It says, sing to him, sing praises to him, speak of all of his wonders, glory in his holy name. In other words, singing to God, worshiping him through song. Now, granted, we can't necessarily always be singing a song when we're at work. You know, maybe we do have a type of job that allows us to be able to sing while we work, but for some who are engaged with maybe customer service, other things where you have to communicate with people quite a bit, you may not be able to be singing the whole time, but you can have a melody going on in your heart. Let one of those hymns, one of those worship songs that you sang on Sunday morning, let it flow in your heart. Let that tune be resonating in your mind as you engage in whatever you have to do at work or at home. Let a song continually be playing in your heart, making melody to God there in your heart. The fourth one has to do with seeking God. It says, let the heart of those who seek the Lord be glad. Seek the Lord and his strength. Seek his face continually. Having this posture of just seeking God, desiring him. It may not be seen as an action in and of itself, but it is. Having this longing, this yearning inside your heart to know God and to know more of him. Just that attitude, that disposition is really an act of worship. Because you know, and you are putting God in his proper place. And you, being humble and putting yourself in the proper place, is desiring him in that place. And desiring to draw close to him, to sit at his feet, to learn from him, to grow before him, to mature before him, to just have him in your life. When it talks about seeking his face continually, that means seeking his presence. When they talked about, back then when they talked about being in someone's presence, it meant being in their face. In other words, being face to face with someone. It's the difference between emailing someone and talking to them face to face. You're actually in their presence. And that's what we ought to seek, God's presence, the reality of God's presence in our life. That is an act of worship. And then the fifth thing has to do with simply remembering. This is found in verse 5. Remember his wonders which he has done, his marvels, and the judgments uttered by his mouth. By thinking back over your own life, the things that God has done in your life, the way that he has been there for you, the answered prayers that you have received from the Lord, the times when you were down and out and the Lord picked you up, the time when you were between a rock and a hard place and God rescued you. Remember those things. Think about those things. Meditate on them. That is an act of worship because you're giving credit back to God. And you're giving the glory back to him and the praise back to him for those things. So easily we forget the things that the Lord has done for us in the past. The Israelites did it out in the wilderness, and we can do it too. God does great things for us, and a day or two goes by, or a week or two goes by, and we forget. And it's like starting all over again. We need to remember what God has done for us. That is an act of worship as well. So these are some things that we can do. Hopefully they helped expand your idea of what worship is, and to give you more avenues in which to worship God. One, by giving him thanks. Two, by speaking about his great deeds to other people. Thirdly, by singing to him. Fourthly, by seeking His face. And fifthly, by remembering the great things that He has done. Let's try to engage in all of these today. See if you can't engage in every single one of these today. And see if it doesn't expand again your thoughts about worship and your opportunities of worshiping the Lord. Well, thank you guys for listening in today. I hope you guys have a great day. Love you guys. God bless.